When the officers walked onto that plane and called her name instead of mine, I finally realized karma doesn't need noise, it just needs patience. She thought she ruined my family over $100 lawn fee, but she never saw my badge coming. I still remember that morning like it was yesterday, the way she looked at me, her nose tilted up like she smelled something rotten in the air. I was sitting quietly in 2A, reading an old paperback, when her voice sliced through the cabin like a siren. "Excuse me, but people like him don't usually sit in first class," she said, loud enough for everyone to hear. Every head turned. The flight attendant froze, her eyes darting between us. My palms clenched under the table, fighting the urge to respond. I had dealt with Karen before, our neighborhood's self-appointed HOA queen, but I never thought I'd see her again, much less on a flight to New York. Back home, she tried forcing my wife to pay a ridiculous $100 lawn appearance fee. I refused, politely but firmly. That made me her enemy. Now here she was, standing in front of me in pearls and attitude, pretending not to recognize me, yet clearly enjoying the scene. "You must be lost, sir. Coach is behind the curtain," she smirked. The passengers gasped. I stayed silent, letting her dig her own grave. As the captain's voice came on, I smiled faintly. She had no idea that on this flight I was the law. And before we landed, I'd remind her, in a way she'd never forget. "Before we go on, please, where are you watching from and what time is it right now? I want to see how many families, parents, and neighbors are feeling this story across the country tonight. Your comment helps this message reach more people who've faced unfair HOA rules too." It all began 3 years before that flight, in our little community on Lake Evergreen, just outside Knoxville, Tennessee. Karen Lutz had just been elected HOA president after bullying her way through every meeting. She ran it like a dictatorship. She fined people for grass being too tall and colors being too bright. She once made a widow repaint her shutters 3 times. My wife, Laura, tried to stay civil, baking cookies for the meetings and sending polite emails. But Karen saw kindness as weakness. One spring morning, Karen knocked on our door holding a clipboard. "Your lawn isn't HOA standard," she said. "That'll be $100. I laughed, thinking she was joking. "Karen, it's grass, not gold. We just mowed yesterday." She frowned. "Rules are rules. Pay it by Friday or face penalties." Her tone was smug, like she'd already won. I refused. "I'm not paying a made-up fee. We've lived here 10 years without issues." From that day, she made it personal. Complaint letters, anonymous notes, and even rumors at church about our unkempt property. I kept my cool, but every line she crossed lit a spark inside me. I never imagined that spark would one day ignite 30,000 feet in the air. By the time that fateful flight happened, I had left local law enforcement and moved into federal service as a deputy air marshal. Most people think air marshals wear uniforms. We don't. We blend in. Quiet, invisible, ready. That week, I was assigned to a flight from Nashville to New York, guarding a high-profile business delegation. When I boarded, I immediately noticed her in the boarding area, Karen, with her pearls and Prada bag, bragging loudly on her phone. $5 million meeting, Wall Street investors, this could change my life, she said, making sure everyone heard. I smirked. Karma had a funny sense of timing. As fate would have it, my seat assignment put me right across the aisle from hers. I tucked my badge deeper into my jacket. When she saw me sit, her jaw dropped. Then came that sneer, the one I knew too well. And when she muttered, "People like you don't belong here," my patience snapped in half. But training kicked in. Observe. Let her expose herself. Little did she know, this flight would test both of our limits and decide who really had power at 30,000 feet. Karen wasn't done after that insult. She doubled down, trying to rally others around her arrogance. "Flight attendant, can you check this man's ticket? I'm certain he doesn't belong here," she said with fake sweetness. The attendant, a young woman named Elise, looked uneasy but nodded. "Sir, may I see your boarding pass?" I handed it over calmly. "See to it." Confirmed. Elise's cheeks flushed as she realized Karen was lying. Karen scoffed. "There must be some mistake." Passengers murmured. A businessman whispered, "What's her problem?" A teenage girl muttered, "Classic Karen." Karen turned red, but she wasn't finished. "You people always think rules don't apply to you," she hissed. Her words hit harder than she realized. Every stereotype, every prejudice, wrapped in fake civility, all spilling out midair. I smiled faintly, leaning back. "Ma'am, I think you should sit down before you embarrass yourself further." Her jaw dropped. "How dare you?" That's when the captain announced turbulence, and she stumbled, clutching her champagne. The cabin laughed quietly. For a moment, I thought that was calm enough. But destiny had a longer memory. And so did I. Half an hour later, the flight had calmed. But Karen hadn't. She called over the attendant again, demanding to switch seats away from me. "He's making me uncomfortable," she said dramatically. Elise sighed. "Ma'am, he hasn't spoken to you since boarding." Karen pointed. He stared at me. "It's threatening." My jaw tightened. False accusation, the oldest trick in her book. Elise looked torn, glancing at me for help. I gave her a subtle nod. It was time to end this. I quietly flashed my Air Marshal badge under the napkin, and her eyes widened in recognition. "Understood," she whispered. "Would you like me to note the behavior?" "Yes," I said calmly. "Document everything." Karen noticed the exchange, suspicion flaring in her eyes. "What's going on? Is he in trouble?" Elise smiled politely. "Not exactly, ma'am." Karen rolled her eyes. "Typical. Everyone's afraid to confront him." I sipped my coffee, steadying my breath. Inside, I knew this wasn't just about a flight. It was about every time she disrespected good people just because she could. And this time, she was going to face real consequences, at 30,000 feet. Mid-flight, Karen began recording me on her phone, whispering loud enough for others to hear. "Documenting this man harassing me," she said. I ignored her, focused on my duty, but she wanted a scene. "He's glaring at me again. Do something." Elise warned her gently. "Ma'am, please stop recording other passengers." Karen snapped, "I know my rights," waving her phone. That's when the captain called Elise to the cockpit for a security update. I followed discreetly. "Passenger in 2B?" I asked. The captain nodded. "Yes, she's creating disturbance reports. You're clear to act." I returned to the cabin, calm as ever, flashing my badge discreetly at the senior attendant. Her tone changed instantly. "Ma'am, we'll need you to put the phone away now. Failure to comply may result in detainment upon landing." Karen froze. "Detainment?" Her confidence faltered. "Yes," I said quietly, meeting her eyes. "And if you interfere again, you'll be removed before we—" An hour before landing, the captain contacted ground control to report a disruptive first-class passenger. Protocol required documentation. I filed my report calmly, stating her refusal to comply with crew instructions and recorded harassment. Karen overheard me and panicked. "Wait, what are you writing?" "I didn't do anything wrong." I didn't reply. Silence, I'd learned, scares bullies the most. She started begging the attendant, "Please, can we forget this? I have an important meeting in New York." Elise stayed professional. "Ma'am, the situation has been escalated to security." Her pearls trembled as she clutched them. "This can't be happening." Meanwhile, passengers whispered, recognizing karma unfolding right before their eyes. I watched the clouds outside, remembering all the notes she left on my wife's car. "You don't belong here, pay your dues." Now she was about to learn what accountability felt like. As we began descent, I tightened my seatbelt, calm and steady. For once, justice was about to land right on time. We touched down at JFK smoothly, but the tension in first class was thick enough to slice with a knife. Before the seatbelt sign turned off, 2 uniformed Port Authority officers boarded the plane. "Passenger Karen Lutz, please come with us," one said firmly. Her voice cracked. "There must be a mistake. I'm meeting investors, $5 million. I kept my eyes on the window, pretending to adjust my watch. The other officer explained, "You've been reported for non-compliance and passenger harassment. You'll need to answer a few questions." She turned to me, suddenly recognizing the badge glint under my jacket. You did this. I met her gaze calmly. You did this to yourself, Karen. The cabin was silent, except for the quiet shuffle of her designer heels on the carpet as she was escorted out. As the door closed behind her, a ripple of whispers followed. The teenage girl from earlier muttered, "That's karma in heels." I leaned back in my seat, breathing deeply. For once, peace and poetic justice shared the same cabin. Later that evening, while waiting for my connection, I passed by a cafe and overheard a conversation. "Did you hear about that HOA woman?" someone said, scrolling through their phone. "She missed her Wall Street presentation. Investors pulled out $5 million down the drain." I smiled faintly. The universe doesn't always move fast, but when it does, it moves precisely. I ordered a black coffee, feeling no triumph, just quiet closure. All those years she lorded over neighbors, using rules as weapons. Now, her own arrogance had grounded her. Laura called to check in. "How was the flight?" "Peaceful," I said, sipping slowly. She laughed. "That's rare for you." "Yeah," I replied. "But sometimes peace comes after a little turbulence." As I hung up, I thought about forgiveness, but some lessons, I realized, are better delivered by experience than apology. And Karen had just experienced hers, at 30,000 feet. It's been 20 years since that flight, but the memory still lingers like vapor trails in a clear blue sky. Karen eventually lost her HOA seat, filed for bankruptcy, and moved away. I never saw her again. Sometimes I wonder if she ever realized who I truly was that day, not just a neighbor, but a man who stood his ground with dignity. People often ask if I feel guilty for what happened. The truth? I didn't humiliate her. I simply revealed who she already was. That flight wasn't revenge. It was a reckoning, a reminder that power without respect always collapses under its own weight. I still live on Lake Evergreen, retired now, tending the same lawn she once tried to fine me for. Every morning I mow it myself, not because I have to, but because I can. Sometimes, when the wind rustles the grass, I hear echoes of that day.